Trump, who is a very savvy man in the ways of these things, sees that if he forced Lutnick out, that would just pour gas on this whole thing.
That suggests that the going on 500,000 private sector jobs were created. Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of The Washington Examiner. If you're joining us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel and join with the 250,000 other people who watch Washington Examiner videos on YouTube. I'm joined, as I generally am, by Byron York, who is joining us from Boston. He's Chief Political Correspondent of The Washington Examiner. And Byron, I want to talk about the Epstein files, which is actually something which I rarely do voluntarily, but to me, it seems like there's a kind of inflection point here. The latest member of the Trump administration, sort of in the crosshairs about this, is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. How is he come into focus on this? Why is he now the main focus, and what's going on with him?
I think this is going to be an interesting case, the Lutnick case, and how people, under what circumstances do people suffer damage for connections to Epstein? We've obviously seen people suffer grievous and kind of well-deserved damage, like Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson. Larry Summers is basically in hiding because of this. So there's a lot of people who've taken big hits because of this. Now, with Lutnick, we know that Epstein allegedly had the largest single family home in Manhattan, this huge, beautiful old house, and Howard Lutnick happened to live next door.
Right.
And Lutnick had said that he met Epstein as his next door neighbor in 2005 and basically was creeped out and said he was never going to see this guy again.
Right.
And that's now, Lutnick didn't say this under oath. He didn't say it to Congress. He didn't say it to the FBI. He was on a podcast and said that. Well, so now we've learned that not only did he not see Epstein again, in later years, and this was after Epstein had been convicted of sex crimes the first time, and in later years, Lutnick actually visited Epstein's island. Lutnick was on vacation. He was with his wife and his children and another couple and their children. And they make arrangements, and their emails making arrangements to visit via boat Epstein's island, where they spend an hour having lunch and then leave.
Right.
So now there's no hint of any sort of Epstein-like misconduct. This did not involve sexual activity or any of that sort of stuff. And so he goes and he has lunch with Epstein. And then later, when Epstein is absolutely radioactive, he denies that he's ever seen him. And then the documents come out. So the question is, does somebody with what appears to be a pretty benign episode with Epstein suffer reputational career damage? Or can we distinguish between people like Prince Andrew and people who stopped by with their family for lunch and then left?
Right. So to me, and perhaps we disagree on this, is that I felt like the fact that in the middle of a holiday with a family, with another family, with all the children, they stopped by and they had lunch for 1 hour. To me, it's something of a nothing burger. And Lutnick, I think, as you said, basically he cut off connection with Epstein in 2005. And I believe he said something along the lines of there may have been the exchange of like 6 emails or 8 emails over the course of 10 years. It seemed to me a kind of, I don't know exactly the words that he was saying before he was under oath and before this lunch was revealed, but I think it's possible to regard oneself as having no relations with somebody when there might have been an email on average once every 18 months. And he did say he had no relationship. So Chris Van Hollen, amongst other senators, want to say, well, the issue is not that you did anything wrong. We're not trying to imply that you were involved in the sort of wider scandal involving Epstein, but you told us that you had no relations with him. I think there's a kind of gray areas of meaning on having no relations with somebody, but do you think that it's worse than that? Do you think that the Van Hollen has a point in making that, asserting that there was some kind of dishonesty here?
Well, we know that Van Hollen's motivation and all Democrats' motivation is to try to tarnish Trump in this. That's the whole game. It doesn't really matter about Lutnick himself. And also, Van Hollen tried to give the impression that Lutnick had somehow lied to Congress by talking to a podcast and
Right.
saying something. Well, he didn't lie to Congress. He wasn't testifying, and he didn't say that to Congress. And when he was speaking to Congress under oath, he talked about the lunch.
Right.
So that's not an issue. I do find it difficult to believe that when he said he didn't have any more contact with Epstein, he forgot this visit on the boat to the island for lunch.
Right.
So it does not speak well of Lutnick in my view, but it doesn't really go beyond that.
So all right. How much benefit do you think that the Democrats can get from this? Obviously, I mean, there was a hearing. It might even still be going on as we speak, but certainly this morning, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, was up on the Hill, and she was being grilled by Democrats on Epstein matters and being, told that she needed to apologize to the victims and things like that. Are there diminishing returns for the Democrats? And I have read that there are more and more people, even who are not fans of Trump, who think that, to put it in a kind of, in one way, that the juice is just not worth the squeeze. They're just not going to get what they want out of this, and there are diminishing returns. Can this continue to work for Democrats, or are they wasting their time, and should they be spending their time for political purposes on something other than this?
Well, you can't say that it's been a success for Democrats. It has been because it has gotten so much sort of megaphone coverage in the press. I think they view it as a plus. Also, remember, there's a small contingent of Republicans who like Thomas Massey on the Hill, who seem kind of determined to pursue this, even though it doesn't appear to touch Trump much. And as a matter of fact, we did see it touch Trump a little bit in these latest revelations, in the sense that in 2006, after it became public that the Palm Beach Police Department was investigating Epstein, Trump calls them up, according to testimony by the police chief at the time, and says, "Thank goodness you're doing this."
Oh, really?
And everybody knew he was doing this, but thank goodness you're doing this. And look into Ghislaine Maxwell. She's really evil here. So, I mean, what we found out about Trump was Trump encouraging the police to investigate this. So right now, it seems to have done him no lasting damage, and it's been kind of a cliche on the right to say that Epstein is the Democrats' Russia this time around with Trump. And if you remember, they kept Russia going, the Russia scandal going long after it was clear that there was no collusion,
Right.
and they only sort of gave up on it in the summer of 2019, when the special prosecutor who had investigated Trump for more than a year had come to the conclusion that he could not establish that collusion, or he called it conspiracy and coordination, had taken place.
Right. Yeah.
So eventually these things do run out of gas. But
Right.
right now, I think the Democrats still see some benefit.
Well, it's interesting that the point you make that Trump, as evidence has come out, actually he's gained a certain degree of distance from it, and actually encouraging an investigation. This clearly isn't the way that the Democrats wanted to go. But to me, there's another sign that he doesn't feel very troubled by it, and that is the fact that the White House has so far, at least, stood behind Lutnick. It's kind of shrugging it off. Pam Bondi, who has been obviously criticized and indeed, I think, made some early mistakes relating to the case, is still there. And indeed, not so much associated with the Epstein case, but also, you know, other members of the cabinet. So, for example, Tulsi Gabbard is still there, even though that people regard her as tarnished. The fact is that pretty much heads are not rolling. It seems to me that to indicate that Trump is sort of fairly relaxed at the moment about, even though he's kind of behind in the polls, he doesn't feel, if he felt that he needed to sacrifice some people or throw some people to the wolves in order to salvage his own position, I have no doubt that he would do it. He doesn't seem to feel the need to do that right now.
Yeah, I think as far as Epstein is concerned, Trump, who is a very savvy man in the ways of these things, sees that if he forced Lutnick out, that would just pour gas on this whole thing.
Right.
It would just be, the Democrats would be absolutely delighted. It would tell them that they're doing the right thing.
Right.
Trump is scared that there's really something to this, because there must be more to this if Trump were to force out the Secretary of Congress. So even though we don't have any evidence, let's keep going.
Right.
So I think Trump realizes that sacking Lutnick would send absolutely the wrong signal both to the Democrats and to the press.
Right. So, Byron, let's turn attention to a different subject, and that is the jobs numbers that just came out for January. Very much stronger than were expected. I believe that it was more than 130,000 net gain, which was considerably more than was expected, despite the fact that about a third of a million fewer jobs were in the public sector, government jobs, in fact, being axed. So that suggests that the going on 500,000 private sector jobs were created, more than making up for lost jobs in the public sector. Talk a little bit about what that means, particularly as the economy is the kind of key to voters' hearts in the midterm elections coming up in November. This is surely very good news for Trump, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you're right. It's just plain good news. It's kind of another embarrassment for the financial press, who have to put the word unexpected into every story
Right.
when jobs numbers come out. Because if you go back for months and months, it's always jobs numbers were X number of jobs created this month, in defiance of expectations or surprising analysts or blah blah blah. This was another time in which a lot of the so-called experts were predicting a bad jobs report, and you got a good jobs report. Now, on the government thing, I think this is so interesting, because basically what we've been seeing since Trump really took hold in the first several months of 2025 is a reduction in the size of the government workforce.
Right.
Both through generous offers on the part of Trump that a lot of government employees took advantage of, and in early retirements from a lot of workers. Maybe they don't like Trump, didn't want to work for Trump. But regardless, the size of government is shrinking. And if you're a conservative who's been saying that's what you want for the last 50 years, that reducing the size of government is one of the basic tenets of conservative philosophy, Trump is doing that.
Right.
The sort of bloated government payrolls Trump is actually doing. And the last thing you said that's important is that he seems to be making up for that loss by a bigger gain in the private sector.
Yeah. It was a very good report, and obviously people will already thinking, okay, well, is this confirmed in the next one? How does this play out over the course of the next 9 months? But certainly some good news for Trump on the economy, and that's what he needs it most on going into the elections. That's where we'll leave it, Byron. Thanks very much for joining me this week. Thank you all for joining us again, and please come back next time for another edition of Political Perspectives.